Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a plain and simple, book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study of the entire Bible. Currently, we are in Psalms 104. And that's it. These particular Psalms here, as we close out the fourth section of the book, are a little longer, so I'm going to jump right into it. And then we'll see how it goes because Psalm 103 with a wonderful psalm about forgiveness. I don't know. I'm going to try to get through it, but sometimes, as you know, too many good stuff in here that we just cannot just kind of pass over. All right, Psalm 104, and it says, "My soul praises Yahweh, Lord my God, you are very great. You are clothed with majesty and splendor." Now, I think if we have to wait to see the splendor of God, the majesty of God. The psalmist is declaring it to us, and we can only imagine right now, but there's going to come a time when we will see the majesty of God. And that you are clothed with majesty and splendor. He wraps himself in light as if it were a robe, spreading out the sky like a canopy, laying the beams of his palace on the waters above, making the clouds his chariots, walking on the wings of the wind, and making his winds his messengers, flames of fires his servant. Now he's referring to here in verse 4 angels, but here you see what it's. I think this is we could classify this as anthropomorphic language, meaning that they are speaking, they are describing God in human terms. Okay, in other words, other words to describe God that we could understand. So anthropomorphic terms is using every kind of everyday um, earthly things to sort of just give sort of an idea of what God is. In this case, the majesty here of God. In other words, does God actually lay out the beams of his palace on the waters above? Meaning that would be the heavens or the atmosphere. Well, the answer is no. Okay, but again, describing to us what God, to give us a picture. Okay, verse 5, he established the earth on its foundations, it will never be shaken. You cover it with the deep as if it were a garment. Now the deep refers to the waters. The waters stood above the mountains. Now, in order to get a picture of this, go back to Genesis 1, and you see the earth submerged in water, and then God separating the waters. He's getting ready to give us another glimpse here of this. Verse 7, verse 6 again, you covered it with deep as if it were a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. At your rebuke, the waters fled. At the sound of your thunder, they hurried away. Mountains rose and valleys sank. Now, the psalmist here could be writing under the inspiration, giving us some glimpses of kind of creation, what happened in terms of creation. The pressure differences when the earth was submerged in waters, mountains and valleys emerged. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there because I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to embarrass myself further, but I'm not. But anyway, verse 9, you set boundaries they cannot cross, and they will never cover the earth again. Now, this seems to be referring to also the flood of Noah. This was the promise that the waters would never cover the earth again, not just a region, but the earth. Verse 10, he caused the springs to gush into the valleys. They flow between the mountains. They supply water from every wild beast. The wild donkeys quench their thirst. The birds of the sky live beside the spring. They sing among the foliage. He waters the mountains from his palace. The earth is satisfied by the fruit of your labor. He causes the grass to grow for the livestock. He provides crops for man to cultivate, producing food for the earth, wine that makes the heart glad, making his face shine with oil, and bread that sustains man. I want to say this, that this to me, for me, debunks evolution, because you have to explain why evolution would form this, particularly how the earth is fitted, created for man, created to sustain man. Okay. Verse 16, the trees of the Lord flourish, the cedars of Lebanon that he planted. There the birds make their nests, the stork makes its home in the pine trees. The high mountains are for the wild goats. The cliffs are a refuge for the hyrax. He made the moon to mark the festivals, and the sun knows when to set. You bring darkness, and it becomes night. And when all the forest animals stir, the young lions roar for their prey and seek their food from God. The sun rises, they go back, they lie down in the dens. Man goes out to his work and to his labor, and labors until evening. Now, just so you know, this is not an 8-hour day, 5 days a week, with weekends off. This was really a sun up to sun day, so more like a 12-hour work day, 6 days a week. Okay. Verse 24. How countless are your works, Lord! In wisdom, you have made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. Now again, absolutely right here, that the earth, the wisdom of God shows all of these things that He's describing for us right here are God's wisdom in terms of why this is. And my thing is, how could evolution produce this? Verse 25. Here is the sea, vast and wide, teeming with creatures beyond number, living things both small and large and small. Verse 26. There the ships move about, and Leviathan which you form to play there. Now remember, we keep always mentioning this creature, Leviathan. We don't know if it still exists today, but it was certainly a large, powerful creature. And again, we don't know if it exists today or not, but when you think about some of the sea monsters that we see today, yes, think of an alligator, and again, but much, 100 times more larger and more powerful. And Leviathan might have even be what we may consider a sea dragon. Verse 27, all of them wait for you to give them their food at the right time. When you give it to them, they gather it. When you open your hand, they are satisfied with good things. So again, this is what we call it anthropomorphic term, or theological people call it the anthropomorphic term, because does God actually feed with his hands, right? Verse 29, when you hide your face, they are terrified. When you take away their breath, they die and return to the dust. When you send your breath, they are created. You renew the face of the earth. May the glory of the Lord endure forever. May the Lord rejoice in his works. He looks at the earth and it trembles. He touches the mountains and they pour out smoke. I will sing to the Lord all my life. I will sing praise to my God while I live. May my meditation be pleasing to him. I will rejoice in the Lord. May sinners vanish from the earth and the wicked people be no more. My soul praises Yahweh. Hallelujah. Another powerful verse, Psalm. Let's go to Psalm 105. Psalm 105. Give thanks to Yahweh, call on his name, proclaim his deeds among the people. Sing to him, sing praises to him. Tell about his wonderful works. Honor his holy name. Let the hearts of those who seek Yahweh rejoice. Search for the Lord and for his strength. Seek his face always. Remember the wonderful works he has done. His wonders and judgments he has pronounced. You offspring of Abraham, his servants, Jacob descendants, his chosen ones. Um, Now, when he talks about the chosen ones, keep this in mind, he is referring to Israel. Okay, he is referring to Israel. All right. Um, Verse 7, he is the Lord our God. His judgments govern the whole earth. Um, God is always, even though, again, we ask, where is God? And this is common thought, common question. But notice he says here, his judgments govern the whole earth. There were times everyone will know what is right and wrong. I want you to think about that. Everyone. There were if man was left to himself, when Adam sinned, if man was left to himself, it would be just like the flood of Noah. God would judge us. If God didn't judge us, man would destroy himself. Think about if wicked men right now, if wicked man right now gets a hold of or gets in control of the nuclear bombs. We're almost there in some cases that you got an evil man that, for evil's sake, launch nuclear bombs. Okay, I think we avoided one with a certain president, but I digress. But at a certain point in time, the law was given to govern man, and that law set up the righteous and just ways. Even though we don't live by them, but at least it's a guide. Okay, the laws are a guide. Verse 8, he remembers his covenant forever, the promise he ordained for 1,000 generations, the covenant he made with Abraham, swore to Isaac, and confirmed to Jacob as a decree, and to Israel as an everlasting covenant. I will give the land of Canaan to you as your inherited portion. Now, this is something that is not been fulfilled. The land of Israel itself is only a small portion of it. As we get into the ages to come, the millennial age and all that, you will see more of the fulfillment of this in its ultimate fulfillment. Verse 12, when they were few in number, very few indeed, and temporary residents of Canaan, talking about Abraham, wandering from nation to nation, from one kingdom to another, he hollowed no one to oppress them. He rebuked the kings on their behalf. Do not touch my anointed ones or harm my prophets. Now, there are a lot of leaders that use this. Let me just say this. A lot of pastors today use this to keep you from questioning them, from criticizing them. That's not what he's talking about. The do not touch my anointed means exactly that. They were doing them harm. They were killing them, arresting them, jailing them, preventing them from giving the word of the Lord. Okay. Verse 16, he called down famine against the land and destroyed the entire food supply. He sent a man ahead of him, Joseph. Now, this is kind of a history of Israel right here. Notice how he's going to run down a history of Israel, of how God dealt with the seed or the descendants of Abraham. And remember, he started with Abraham. He started that with Abraham. Verse 17, he sent the man ahead of him, Joseph, who was sold as a slave. They hurt his feet with shackles. His neck was put in an iron collar. Now, when we go back and read the story, we don't get these details. We get a little more details about kind of how bad it was for Joseph, how hurtful it was for Joseph. For Joseph. Verse 19, until the time his prediction came true, the word of the Lord tested him. The king sent for him and released him. The ruler of the people set him free. He made him master of his household. He ruled over all his possessions, binding his officials at will and instructing his elders. In other words, remember when Joseph became the head of the state and Joseph said, no one will live or die without you. We're going to kind of get a little taste that Joseph might have executed some people from being not following his rules. Verse 23, then Israel went down to Egypt. Jacob lived as a foreigner in the land of Ham. Okay. The Lord made his people very fruitful. He made them more numerous than their foes, whose heart he turned to hate his people and to deal deceptively with his servants. Now, so we're going to get us a nice little detailed kind of journey of the journey of Israel. You will note he said that Egypt is a part of the descendants of Ham. I'm going to get into this whole descendants, what the descendants of Hams are, but they are the people of the Middle East, including but not limited to Africa. But Egypt certainly is descendant of Ham. Ham himself, the reason why Ham is kind of a controversial person because Ham was the one who went into the tent after Noah got drunk. And it's questionable in terms of what happened in the tent. In other words, did Ham just look upon his father's nakedness? Or did Ham go further with that and do something to his father? The text itself is not clear, but it certainly raises the question. And thus, when Noah arose from his sleep and saw, and it said, and it saw what Ham had done, he pronounced a curse on one of the seed of the descendants of Ham, which was Canaan. Not all of the descendants, but one of the descendants of Ham, which was Canaan. Verse 24, the Lord made his people very fruitful. He made them more numerous than their foes, whose heart he had turned to hate his people. Kind of interesting. He said he made them more numerous than his foes, whose heart he turned to hate his people and to deal deceptively with his servants. Verse 26, he sent Moses his servant and Aaron whom he had chosen. They performed this miraculous sign among them and wonders in the land of Ham. He sent darkness and it became dark, for they did not defy his commands. He turned their water into blood and caused their fish to die. Their land was overrun with frogs, even in their royal chambers. He spoke, and insects came, gnats throughout their country. He gave them hail for rain and lightning throughout their land. He struck their vines and their fig trees. He shattered their trees, the trees of their territory. He spoke, and locusts came, young locusts without number. They devoured all the vegetation in their land and consumed the produce of their land. He struck all the firstborn in their land, all of their first progeny. So in other words, he just destroyed Egypt. He did. He just reduced Egypt. And this is when God says, I will show my power through Pharaoh. I will harden his heart, and I will show my power through Pharaoh. Verse 37. Then he brought Israel out with silver and gold, and no one among his tribes stumbled. Egypt was glad when they left, for the dread of Israel had fallen upon them. He spread a cloud as a covering, and gave fire to light up at night. They asked, and he brought quail, and satisfied them with bread in heavens. He opened a rock, and water gushed out. It flowed like a stream in the deserts. For he remembered his holy promise to Abraham, his servant. He brought his people out with rejoicing, his chosen ones with shouts of joy. He gave them the land of the nations, and they inherited what other peoples had worked for. He gave them the lands of the nations, and they inherit what other peoples had worked for. In other words, the cities. They actually did inherit like cities that were already built. It would be like going to a town where roads are already constructed, all the infrastructures are constructed. He says, and this happened so they might keep his statutes and obey his instructions. Hallelujah. And of course they didn't. The amazing thing is that what all of this that God did for Israel, which no other nation could boast of, no other nation had the true and living God work for them as this nation, and yet Israel wanted to be like other nations. Other nations wanted to be like Israel, but Israel wanted to be like other nations. Unbelievable. I often say this: Israel's unbelief is unbelievable. Okay, guys, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. And as always, if you have a thought or comment, add it to the comment section below. All comments are welcome, and I'll see you in the next study.